Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 42nd Annual H. Neil Mallon Award Dinner. To deliver tonight's invocation, please welcome Bishop Edward Burns.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bishop Edward Burns. I'm the Catholic Bishop of the Diocese of Dallas, and I've been the Bishop of the Diocese of Dallas for 8 years. A little bit of background, I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and so I have to confess, yes, I am a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Transplant, the crowd turned ugly. Transplanted into cowboy country. But I want to tell you that I am indeed one with my flock. And so I am a Dallas Cowboys fan until they play the Steelers, and then the bishop will have a conflicted conscience. Pope Francis appointed me the Bishop of the Diocese of Dallas 8 years ago. Prior to that, I was the Bishop of Juneau, Alaska, and I served in Alaska for 7 years. Moving from Juneau, Alaska to Dallas is what I call climate change, and it's a joy. But I'm proud and I applaud the World Affairs Council of Dallas-Fort Worth for its 7 decades of fostering understanding, building bridges, and inspiring action across our community and the world. Your mission to create connections, generate ideas, and inspire action has never been more vital or more urgently needed than it is today. It is a privilege to be with all of you, and it's a privilege this evening as the gala honors a dear friend, Jim Keyes, a man whose faith, leadership, and generosity of spirit has blessed so many. Jim's steadfast commitment to service and his vision for a better world continue to inspire all who know him. It's an honor to be with all the special guests who are here this evening. Now let us turn our hearts to prayer, asking God's blessing on this evening and upon our meal. Blessed are you, Lord God of all creation, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Through your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, you have poured out upon us every good gift. We thank you for the gift of this evening, for the fellowship we share, for the work and witness of the World Affairs Council, and for the example of those we honor this evening. Lord, give us your Spirit as we answer the call to seek peace, to serve one another, and to build a world rooted in understanding and compassion. Bless this meal we are about to receive. May it strengthen us for the good work you set before us. Bless all who have prepared it and those who will serve it. And in a special way, bless those who are less fortunate. We ask this in your holy name. Amen.
Please welcome President Emeritus and Interim CEO, Jim Falk, joined by Chairman of the Board of the World Affairs Council of Dallas-Fort Worth, Larry Pascal.
I get the short mic. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. It's hard to believe it's the 42nd Mallon Award Dinner. And thank you, Bishop Burns. Really appreciate your inspiring words. And let me encourage all of you to begin your dinner. Larry, Jim Keyes, I think you would agree, he's got a lot of friends. I mean, look at this room. No wonder we needed to get one of the largest ballrooms, certainly in Dallas, if not all of North Texas. In fact, Jim Keyes is indeed an extraordinary and steadfast advocate for education, whose leadership has and continues to inspire so many, as we see here tonight. want to give all of you a bit of background. When Jim Keyes, and Larry, you remember this, when he was invited to receive the Mallon Award, he responded with the same humility that we've seen with so many others when we've talked with them about the award. And he said, there's so many other people in the community that are more deserving. Well, after a little bit of prodding, not too much, he said that he would accept the award if we could make the evening less about him and more about education, a forum where we would really talk about the significance and the urgency that we need to address education, not just here in our community, but across the nation and the world. And so obviously we agreed because we share his thoughts about education. And tonight, friends, we really hope that you will walk away with not just a better awareness of why Jim Keyes is an exceptional recipient of the Mallon Award, but also with an increased appreciation and sense of the urgency about the transformational power of education. I think Jim Keyes said it best when he launched the Education is Freedom Foundation at Radio City Music Hall, and believe it or not, that was almost 25 years ago, with these words. Jim Keyes said this: "The power of knowledge is a life-changing force that can help all young people realize that their destiny is in their own hands, and this is the essence of the American dream." He added, "In knowledge is harmony, and in education is freedom."
Thank you, Jim. Some of you may be new to the World Affairs Council. We've been a part of Dallas for almost 75 years. Since 1951, the Council has brought the world's brightest thinkers, leading experts, and history makers to our region. We connect them with thousands of students, teachers, and professionals, bringing global awareness to classrooms, boardrooms, and kitchen tables. International isn't just one initiative at the Council, it's everything we do every day of the year. Our founder, H. Neil Mallon, said it best: "The peace of the world, nothing less, depends to a considerable extent upon how well the people of the country understand and influence our foreign policy." Jim Keyes now joins the distinguished list of honorees who embody Neil Mallon's words and the Council's mission. Tonight would not be possible without our sponsors, whom we would like to recognize at this time. We ask that you kindly hold your applause until all of our supporters have been recognized. I know I spoke for Jim Keyes in thanking our dinner chairs, Nancy Ann and Ray Hunt, Lottie and Bobby Lyle, and Carolyn and David Miller. We thank the host committee, Lucy and Henry Billingsley, Catherine and Craig Hall, Jan Miller and Jeff Rich, and Myrna and Bob Schlegel. We recognize our honorary chairs, former Dallas mayors Ron Kirk, Tom Leppert, and Mike Rawlings. We also thank the presenting sponsors, the men and women of Hunt Consolidated. Ray, we thank you for your being a cornerstone of the World Affairs Council for many decades. Finally, we thank our global engagers and global citizens, all of whom are named in your dinner program.
Larry, as you know, the World Affairs Council is proud to serve as the Secretariat of the DFW Consular Corps. And tonight we're joined by three special friends, the Consul General of Canada, Susan Harper, and a special welcome to two recently arrived Consuls General, the Consul General of Mexico, Luis Rodriguez Bucio, and the Consul General of Peru, Franklin Rojas.
I would also like to recognize Dallas City Council members Adam Basildua, Mayor Pro Tem Jesse Moreno, Bill Roth, and Paul Ridley. We're delighted to have in our audience three former Dallas mayors who understood the importance of connecting the DFW region to the world: Laura Miller, Tom Leppert, and Mike Rawlings. I also wish to recognize our remarkable board of directors, whose commitment strengthens all we do. I've attended many Mallon dinners, but this is my first year as chairman. I'm grateful to serve side by side with our 55-member strong board of directors, representing a wonderful cross-section of private and public institutions from around North Texas. In addition, I would like to thank my predecessor, Brendan McGuire, Regional President of PNC Bank, for his service to the Council.
I think we need to have an applause for everybody here, don't we?
Absolutely. And then finally, last but not least, let me express our gratitude to Jim Falk, who earlier this year graciously returned to Dallas from Santa Fe to lead the council once again. Juggling 2 cities and 6 jobs is no small feat, but Jim brought tremendous energy and dedication to the council. And next month, we will announce our new CEO, who will begin, and this is a hint, her work in January of next year.
Absolutely. And, I just wanted to be able to say, for so long I would go, I worked at the World Affairs Council for almost 20 years, and now I can say for over 20 years. It's a lot easier. But seriously, over the last few months, serving as interim president, it has been such a privilege, ladies and gentlemen, to work with the staff of the council. Each and every day they come to work dedicated to the council's mission. They really are the best. Now, you may have noticed in your program a gold star sticker. If your program has that sticker, at the end of tonight's program, please take it to the registration table, and you'll get a signed copy of Jim Key's book, Education is Freedom. And one other favor to ask of you. Tonight, we need your help to get us started with the conversation about education. There is a 3-question poll on your table, a QR code, and you'll also see it on the screen. There it is. Your responses will be referenced later during the conversation, so we really, really need your help. And we invite all of you to continue to enjoy your dinner and enjoy the Dallas Symphony Orchestra Jazz Quartet, and we'll be back later. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jim is a very passionate guy. He's a Renaissance man. He's actually, many of our friends call him that because he explores everything. Everything's possible with him. Challenges are opportunities to him. He explores everything in every subject, and so I think that gives him the energy and the power to be able to get out there and have a voice in so many different spaces.
Well, he never gives up. So he's always in your face, really focused on what he does. Whatever you focus on, of course, expands. So he's very successful. He is a role model for many and a leader. He's a natural leader.
Very accessible, very smart, of course, very hardworking. And I think he never forgot where he came from. And so when you saw Jim interacting with his people, it was clear that they loved him and respected him, more importantly. And I think Jim had this unique ability to make everybody feel important in the 7-11 success.
He's the kind of person that people will meet and go, you're telling me this guy's the CEO of a big, because he doesn't, for me, he never, came across with those sort of airs. And maybe it's, when you're selling Slurpees and hot dogs, and the fact that Jim worked in the stores. Like every leader at 7-Eleven, he didn't just stay in, the top of the gilded offices. He would get out and get behind the counter and interface with his employees, and he's just a great guy and well deserving of this award this evening.
Well, we met in 1985 on Southwest Airlines, and we were sitting next to each other. He struck up a conversation after 5 attempts. I just didn't want to talk to anybody at that time. We spoke, and the minute we did, I knew he was going to be someone very special. Our family was intact. Jim's was not. His was very disruptive, with growing up the way he did and in and out of different houses and rejection. And he went through a lot.
Yeah, my dad never got, unfortunately, beyond the 6th grade, nor did my mom. They really didn't know what to tell me in terms of career or future, other than my father always knew that the one thing no one could take away from you was your education. And so, son, whatever you do, apply yourself to knowledge. Learn as much as you possibly can, because that will give you the freedom. It was all about freedom. 7-Eleven has a beautiful history. Starting on 12th Street in Oak Cliff is an ice house. And it lived change because it had to evolve from being an ice house to being a convenience retailer. My proudest moment was taking 7-Eleven from basically a struggling, bankrupt company with 10 years of negative sales, negative same-store sales, and took the equity from $4 a share to $40. Well, the opportunity for Blockbuster was actually on the heels of a successful run at 7-Eleven. My job as CEO now, again, change equals opportunity. Well, didn't feel like it at the time, but I had to pivot from transforming the company to now saving the company. I was pleased that I stayed with the mission and had a successful outcome. I have been teaching every team that I've had the importance of embracing change and integrating change into the corporate culture of anywhere I've been, from 7-Eleven to Blockbuster to the American Red Cross or any organization I get involved with. Well, it started interestingly as an effort at 7-Eleven to avoid cutting our charitable contribution budget. We were going through, as I mentioned, a lot of challenges. I said, what if I can demonstrate a return on investment? So I partnered up with several other CEOs, and we all came together and created the Education is Freedom Foundation to be able to build this pipeline of future employees. We have expanded into many more public schools now. We've been around since 2002. Shocking numbers, if you step back and look at it, is probably over 500,000 students that have come through the program in some fashion. And we've raised a small fortune in scholarship money to either give or get scholarships for those students. Most importantly, we've changed so many lives. Most of these kids are first generation, like me, first generation college students.
Think of what he's saying. He's basically saying if you're educated and you have that calling card, you can actually do whatever you want to do. You're actually liberated in so many ways. You're not a prisoner of anything. You're mobile, you're portable. You can learn more, you can be adaptable, you can be so much. So I think Jim is making the case that it's a life skill that you have to get. I think Jim's foundation is very timely. I think we've got to make it timeless.
The one common denominator for me was always to say, when you had the opportunity to educate your kids, why didn't you send them to China or Russia? They sent them here because people all over the world equate education with freedom. And I think in his own way, our honoree tonight, our friend Jim Keyes, has always understood and believed in the power of education to change a child's life.
I think education is freedom. It's one of the greatest things he could ever do. It's a perfect legacy for Jim, and I wish him the best.
The book really is a representation of me, and I am more or less the embodiment of the American dream. I discovered at an early age that no one was going to help me achieve the American dream. I had to do it through hard work and knowledge. So I put together a very simple set of skills, if you will, what to learn, how to learn, and why to learn. It is a privilege now to be invited to speak all over the world. I've been from the Middle East to Asia to Australia, talking about the transformative power of education.
If you look at all the recipients before him, I go, man, Jim stands tall in the midst of all of those people. So hearty congratulations, Jim, and just to say that I'm privileged to call you a friend.
Jim, congratulations to you. It's the Mallon Award. You deserve it.
Jim, my friend, it has been a great ride, great journey. We've done a lot of good. And what makes you so worthy of this award, none of the investments that you have made in our young people and their future did you do for the purpose of winning an award. congratulations to you and to your wonderful wife.
You are joining a very distinguished group of Dallasites who have accomplished amazing things. And I just want to tell you that your commitment to education is freedom, your authoring of the book, Education is Freedom, all of that is empowering so many young kids to get out there and find a way for themselves like you did. Well, I'm so proud of you and I love you very much. Congratulations, Jim.
It is now my pleasure, on behalf of the Board of Directors of the World Affairs Council, to present the 2025 H. Neil Mallon Award to James W. Keyes.
Well, thank you, Larry and Jim Falk, and thank you everyone for being here. I've got so many friends and family grateful for this recognition. And first, I want to thank my family, my loving wife, Margot, as you saw in the film. Yeah, it took me 4 times, 5 times to get her to talk to me. Finally worked, thank goodness. Bishop Burns, thank you so much for beautiful invocation this evening. And Bishop Burns and I had double duty today, serving with the bishop's breakfast at the Catholic Charities. We had about 500 people there for a great breakfast this morning. And the World Affairs Council, of course, Jim, Larry, thank you for this amazing opportunity. You see, the World Affairs Council in Dallas-Fort Worth is more critical than ever before, because I've been around this city now for 30, 35 years, and we always talked about being an international city. We are an international city now. Everywhere where I travel in the world, people want to know more and more about Dallas and talk about their dream of coming here to do business. So we are that international city, and the World Affairs Council is so important. And that move to become an international city came from many of the people in this room. Laura Miller is here, former mayors, Ron Kirk, Mike Rawlings, Tom Leppert, Dale Petrosky from just recently announcing that he's stepping down from the Dallas Regional Chamber. And so many of you in this room have worked so hard to bring so many companies here. I just wish you could have fixed the traffic on the tollway coming in tonight. We've been maybe just a little bit too successful. But thank you for all of that. And the reason that I'm so honored by the legacy of this award, I've got a little full circle story to share with you. H. Neil Mallon was an icon, obviously, the founder of the World Affairs Council for Dallas-Fort Worth, but he was also chairman and CEO of Dresser Corporation. Well, you saw that picture of me growing up in a little 3-room shack. The tall guy, I was the little one, the tall guy was my dad, and he worked for a company called Bay State Abrasives, a dresser company. And I did a summer job one year at Bay State Abrasives. So I actually worked for H. Neil Mallon. So we've come full circle, and that's partly why this is so special for me. But making it also special, the honorees, the legacy that I'm following President George H.W. Bush, Ross Perot Jr. and Sr., Trammell Crow, and so many dear friends, previous awardees, Ray Hunt. And I have to tell you, by the way, Ray and Nancy are here tonight. Bobby and Lottie Lyle, along with Carolyn and David Miller, were sponsors, presenting sponsors for this evening. forever grateful to them, but especially tonight. As you know, there are a couple of other conflicting events, and one is the Distinguished Alumni event for SMU. So Bobby and Lottie, Ray and Nancy, for you to be here with us tonight is just very, very special. So thank you for that. And so many other dear friends that have been awardees in the past, Lucy Billingsley, Kathy and Craig Hall, Mike Rawlings, all who've been award recipients. But of course now, I don't know if you were here last year or the year before. We've been here now for the last couple of years, and you might remember when Ken Hirsch got this award, he was at the World Series, winning the World Series. And then last year, and I had just been announced as this year's recipient, no one could know yet, but I was here for Clark Hunt's, and he was up here with 4 Super Bowl trophies. And I turned to Margot and I said, oh man, I got nothing. I got nothing. How am I going to compete with that? And, well, I do have something. And she reminded me of that. I do have something. And that's a lifelong commitment to the transformation of education. And that's why I asked for this evening to be dedicated to education. And I'm thankful to the World Affairs Council for making that possible. So before we dive into the panel, I want to acknowledge many of the educators and education nonprofits that are joining us here this evening. We've got the Superintendent Elizade. We've got and Dr. Hinojosa, her predecessor. Mita Havlik of the Dallas Education Foundation and her team. Susanna Russell of Education is Freedom, so proud of the accomplishments they've made. Also want to recognize Todd Williams, who couldn't be here tonight, but Commit has done so much for moving forward education in this town. I just want to recognize, I know there's some folks from Commit here, everything they've done. Thank you. And we have so many others from Dallas College, University of Dallas, UTD, SMU, TCU, Texas Women's University, many more are here tonight. The thing I'm most proud of about all of these people is the collaboration, a new level of collaboration we're seeing in Dallas to lift up all of the children of our community. So proud of what they've accomplished. My objective, though, this evening is it could be a little tough love, so I hope all of you will forgive me, because I want to elevate the awareness of what I characterize as a crisis in supply and demand in this country. The most valuable resource of any company or any country, took me my whole career to realize this, is the human resource. And we have a supply problem. We're going to talk about that tonight. The demand is there, and if we want to compete in the next century and beyond, we've got to address this supply problem. So the future of America's way of life, our position in global affairs, and the very future of humanity is at stake. So I hope you'll join me in welcoming 2 former secretaries of education to the stage. And first, Tom Leppert, who's generously offered to be our moderator for this evening. Tom, would you come up and help us introduce secretaries?
Jim, congratulations. This is a special evening for you. Jim and I have had a chance to be involved in a number of different initiatives. I think we both connected very early because we understood the importance of education from a business standpoint and a societal standpoint, but it was also something that was very personal to both of us, given our backgrounds. As Jim said, it has made a difference in his life, and I can assure you that I know of no one that has the dedication, the commitment, and the passion to education that Jim does. And that's what we're going to be talking about this evening. Jim, though, it might be important to start with the World Affairs Council. We associate that being international issues. large policy issues on a geopolitical standpoint. We think of education as being a domestic issue. Why at the World Affairs Council are we talking about education?
Well, Tom, as you know, I've been blessed to be a global business person. I've been all over the world, 7-Eleven, Blockbuster. We had operations in various countries. And I realized that the world is actually shrinking, and it's shrinking because of technology. You remember the book, The World is Flat, David Brooks, a number of years ago. Well, it's a lot flatter today, especially with AI. And that means, in spite of the trend, we've got a lot of trends all over the world toward nationalism, pulling everything back in. I see that as a temporary reaction because, let's face it, people are afraid of a lot of this technology that's out there. And so there's a natural tendency to pull back out of fear. But I don't think you put that technology genie back in the bottle, ever. The world is going to continue to shrink, and global opportunities will become greater and greater. So the question is, can we compete on a global stage without that recognition that our future generations are going to be those workers, the scientists, the doctors, the dreamers that have to be able to compete on the world stage?
And we found historically, and I think in today's environment even more so, that to solve problems, it's going to take the public sector, it's going to take businesses and technology coming together. And all three of those realms are represented on our panel today. It is a privilege to be able to welcome two experts in education. First, John King, who was the Secretary of Education under President Obama, 2016 to 2017, and currently serves as the 15th Chancellor of the State University of New York, which is the largest public education institution in the United States in higher learning. Secretary, good to have you with us. And we're also joined by someone who I think most of you know very well, and that's Margaret Spellings. Margaret was the Secretary of Education under President George W. Bush from 2005 to 2009. Before that, served in the White House as the domestic policy advisor to the president. Since then, she has taken on the presidency of the University of North Carolina system and also the George W. Bush Presidential Center. She was also the CEO of Texas 2036, which focused largely on education. We'll talk a little bit about some of that work this evening. And most recently, she currently is the lead at the Bipartisan Policy Council in Washington, D.C. Given the environment in Washington, I think you deserve sainthood for that. Margaret, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Well, we started out by asking questions of each one of you to get a sense of a framework, a groundwork, a foundation of education and where it stands today. The first question that we asked you was a pretty simple one. What percentage in the United States of fourth graders are proficient at grade level at reading? If we could have that first slide. Our audience said that it was 50%. Now, that's a challenge in and of itself. That means that half of the students are not at grade level. One thing that we found is that if you're not at grade level at the third and fourth level, there is a 2% chance that you will attain an associate's degree. Not a bachelor's degree, but an associate degree, 2%. Unfortunately, the actual number is a little bit below that. It's 30%. 30% of the students in the United States in fourth grade are proficient at reading. If we did it based on math, other subjects, it would largely be the same story. Secretary King, let me ask you, you've been involved in education from primary through, led our nation in education. Why are we losing so many students?
First, it's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be in a room of people with our awardees who are all so focused on education. Look, I think there are a number of things that happen. When Margaret and President Bush were there, when I was there with President Obama, there was a period where we were actually making good progress. We were seeing incremental gains in performance in reading and math, largely driven by a sense of national urgency about it and transparency and accountability, right? Actually reporting on outcomes, school by school, district by district, and then having real accountability for the adults for outcomes for students. And sadly, what happened after the Obama administration ended, that bipartisan consensus around the importance of education as a national imperative kind of fell apart. And then we had COVID. And during the COVID period, we had incredible disruptions to the lives of young people. We had many schools in the country that were closed for a very long period of time, and kids were supposed to be learning at home on computers, and a lot of them weren't. And so today, our performance is below where it was before COVID, but this steady downward trend we've seen really since the end of the Obama administration. And so my fear is we don't have the level of national urgency that we should about educational outcomes. The message that Jim delivered about the centrality of education to the success of our economy, our democracy, our international competitiveness, if you believe that, then you should have your hair on fire about this result, about the fact that only 30% of our kids are proficient in reading at 4th grade, but yet we don't.
You and I had a fascinating conversation before the dinner this evening, and we talked both about the accountability piece, but as it reflected in testing and in standards. And in both cases, we kind of came to common ground that we're moving away from testing, moving away from any type of accountability, and with the challenge of that 30% number, what we're really doing with a lot of our public officials is saying, instead of improve the education, we'll lower the standards. Thoughts?
That's right, and it's very dangerous, right? Because you get into a place where you're throwing in the towel vis-a-vis our international competitors. When you think about South Korea or Singapore or China, they are not saying, well, we'll just lower our standards and this is just how it is. And no, they have the exact opposite strategy, which is they are betting big on education and trying to make sure that even more students every year have the proficiency. And we're seeing that gap then emerge at the higher education level when you ask which countries are leading in the production of engineers, right? Which countries are going to be the ones who succeed in the age of AI? It will be the ones who have the folks who are able to master those technologies. We won't have that leadership role unless we change our mindset about education and make it again a national imperative.
Margaret, that was looking international. You spent a lot of time, Texas 2036, looking at education in Texas. How do you look at our education system here a little closer to home?
Well, first of all, Jim, thank you for using this platform to light the fire around this issue, because you're right, John, my dear friend. We sort of have taken our foot off the gas, and it's kind of a, well, who cares, and we're giving up. And that is something that is going to be so corrosive for our country and certainly, above all, for our kids. Here in Texas, and may I say, I'm a Texas braggadocio with a room full of Texas braggadocios, that Texas has been a leader and a pace setter for so long around accountability, around curriculum, and we were an important part of this. We have more data than any state in the country and so forth, and we're proud of that. But we too had some of the same challenges, obviously, that John talks about. Here in Dallas, with this civic pride and the civic engagement from all the groups that Jim mentioned, and Houston, where we've had a state takeover, and our former Dallas Superintendent Mike Miles decamped there, we are making some progress. I will tell you that, and I brought my little cheat sheet so I'd get the numbers right, our statewide 3rd grade reading average is about 50%. In Dallas, it's 43%. Austin, 48%, Houston, 44%. So we have work to do. We're going in the right direction. We've made improvements, but still lag. Our region overall is about 55%. Math has been, overall, across the country, an easier thing to teach and make progress on. So the data that John referenced, where we were using these tools that we know work to really make progress, we saw bigger gains in math than reading. But there's no way to use AI effectively, to be a well-prepared citizen, to engage in a business, if you can't read and do basic math.
Jim, here in Dallas, you've spent a lot of time. Education is freedom and a number of other initiatives too. I know that you feel very strongly about the local education system.
Yeah, first of all, I'm proud of a lot of the accomplishments that have been made in Dallas, and that's one of the reasons I wanted Superintendent Elizalde and Dr. Hinojosa to be here. We've moved our grade average in Texas from, I think, C to B recently, and we're improving, constant incremental improvements all the time. But that's Dallas, and if we just look down the street at Fort Worth, we all know that the TEA just came in and took over the school system there. So this is a systemic problem. We're making good progress in small steps, but we need almost a revolution in the way we look at our teaching and our learning processes. If you just look at these results, we have to do something. We can't just sit back and continue to make incremental improvements.
And I think we should take some pride in some of the steps that Dallas Independent School District has taken. Probably a leader along with Denver in terms of incentive pay for teachers, linking it back to the performance of students in a number of areas too. In fact, I've got a grandson that is at one of the special schools in the Dallas Independent School District, and my daughter speaks very highly of the school and the people there. But Margaret, I don't think we can lose sight of the numbers that you just quoted to us. 50% of the students are not at grade level. We're still falling far short, even here in Dallas, and Jim, as you mentioned, in Fort Worth, even further. So we've really got a challenge. We asked a second question, which, Secretary, you talked about, in terms of that international look at where we stand. Might be interesting to see what the audience thought. Now, I've got to tell you, I've seen the answer, and I can tell you this audience is pretty smart. We asked the question, where does the United States rank in math out of 37 OECD member countries, the developed countries in the nation? The audience put us in the third quartile, so that's below the mean median. And indeed, the answer is, indeed, the third quartile. More countries are ahead of us than are behind us. Secretary Spellings, what does that mean?
Well, the first thing that's important is that it's, to John's point, other countries are moving faster. They're out of denial and on the way to leapfrog us, and have. And so that's part of what's going on here. I would also say, you know, we say we have an expectation that we're going to provide opportunity to every single individual in this country. But right now, that's a lie. And not everybody says that around the world. Not everybody makes it their stated business, a founding part of our ethics as Americans, as our important public institution, part of our founding, in fact, to have a learned society. And so that's part of what's going on here. But, you know, Tom, people ask me all the time, if we could do just one thing, what would it be? And it would be raise our expectations, raise our sights. I mean, if half the kids, you know, in your family, you know, think of what you want for your own children. If half the flights leaving from Love Field today landed, we'd be pretty upset. If half the steaks served tonight were tainted and you all went home and got food poisoning, we'd be pretty mad about it. But this, we just, you know, so first we have to start with, we think we can, and we can. And we're gonna have to use a different set of tools to do it. Technology, individual learning, tutoring, intensive tutoring, and above all, we need to get the kids in the school. Our absentee rates around this country are really shocking and horrifying.
Especially after the pandemic, as we've
Absolutely. A lot of kids have just not come back at all.
Margaret, it's paradoxical. In business, we think of getting ahead by lifting the standards. People will perform to the standards. As I said a little bit earlier, in education, we're going the other way.
Yeah, and I think that thesis is still sound, but politics are such that, you know, people don't like saying, man, we stink. We got to do a lot better. And so that's what has led to this taking our foot off the gas. And I'm a total policy wonk around these details of accountability and how you make sure that we use, yes, the federal role, my friends, and I am dispirited about some of the conversations we're having when we have this kind of urgency, that the things we're talking about have very little to do with attending to student achievement and much more to do with what bureaucracy is going to manage what level of federal money.
Mr. Secretary, the environment we're in, more importantly, the environment we'll be in the next 10, 20 years, is all based on knowledge. Innovation, creativity, technology, it all comes back to education one way or another. You look at these numbers, what does the future portend?
I think we're at a crossroads. If we don't change course, we will see other countries continuing to outcompete us, and we will lose our advantage particularly in the innovation economy. So that's the dark path. The more optimistic path is that we, have a come to Jesus moment as a country, and we say, this is where we need to refocus on outcomes. We have to be honest. We have a huge, as you and I were talking about, Mayor, before we came on stage, we have an honesty gap, right? If you ask parents around the country, how's your kid doing? Almost every parent says, they're getting A's, they're great, it's all good. But in fact, we know that's not the case, but we don't tell that honest story. And that's why I worry about the loss of the assessment systems and the accountability systems, because then you can't solve a problem you can't see. And if folks don't know how we're doing, we won't have that urgency. But then we have to turn that urgency into actual substantive policy change. I'll give you two quick examples. One, we have a ton of research about how best to teach students to read. And it is shocking that in many schools in this country, it is still true that people ignore that research. They are using strategies that have been proven ineffective, but they're still using them. And we have an increasing number of states committing to what's called the science of reading, using that research to improve reading instruction, but we have a long way to go in preparing the teachers in those strategies. Again, we need the urgency. A second challenge we have is teacher quality is everything. I was sharing with someone at dinner. When I was growing up, both my parents passed away when I was little. My mom when I was 8, my dad when I was 12. The only reason I'm sitting here today is Alan Osterweil, who was my teacher at PS 276 in Brooklyn. He was my teacher in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, and he saved my life because his class was so good, right? Because every day, class was engaging, compelling, challenging, interesting, joyful, and we need more Mr. Osterweil. So how do we do that? I think we should say to young people, if you're willing to commit to teach in a high-needs subject like math or science or teaching students with disabilities or teaching English learners, we'll take care of the cost of school for you. If you'll commit 5 years to do that, if you'll commit 5 years to do that in the high-needs community, we'll take care of the cost of school because you are doing national service.
As you pointed out, Mr. Secretary, the first role of leadership is defining reality. Not the way we want it to be or not the way we think it is, but reality. This is an educated audience, but I would tell you there is a foundation that is in Fort Worth that's done some surveying across the Metroplex. And 95% of the parents believe that nearly all the students are at grade level. In Fort Worth, it's slightly less, Dallas 95. But the perception among parents is that the schools are doing the job that they need to be. Jim, let's flip it to the business side, though. We've talked about the international side. Big challenge of any CEO, I can tell you today, with all the issues on tariffs and some of the other things, is long-term, am I going to have the people in my organization that are smart enough that are going to be able to grow it? Your perspectives on education from a business standpoint, competing in international enterprises.
Yeah, as I was saying, Tom, it's a bit of a supply and demand challenge, and it's one, ironically, that birthed the Education is Freedom Foundation 25 years ago, because at the helm of 7-Eleven, if you think about the number of first-generation Americans we have in the stores, we always thought that was a good thing. We're kind of proud of our heritage there. We have a lot of international franchisees, but then I started asking, why do we have so many? And what I discovered was that we'd have people come from another country with $500 and a degree. And they'd found that they could work at 7-Eleven, work really hard, get another store, bring in their family. They'd work hard, put their kids to school. And I realized 7-Eleven was the American dream. These people were realizing the American dream. Well, why aren't our own kids getting that at least an associate's degree? And so we created the Education is Freedom Foundation as a pipeline to go into the public schools and say, hey, kids, you can do this, you know? It's not that hard. And then huge progress has been made. The Dallas, Justin London's here with the Dallas College, early college programs,
Yeah.
P-Tech. Yes, thank you. Huge advancement in the ability to make college both affordable and available to students, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. We have so much more to do.
We've talked about the international perspective across the globe, but the reality of it is it's coming down to a one-on-one game of basketball. It's China and the United States. Not quite 50% of the total economy, but moving quickly towards it. And when we look at education there, we see a very different picture. We asked the audience a third question, and that was, what percentage of US students are enrolled in college? And this is an interesting one. The audience answered 20%. The actual number, however, is 40%. Now that's encouraging when you look at it. However, let's throw another piece into the equation of that one-on-one basketball game. In China, it's 68%, 40 versus 68%. Even more glaring, if you go back to 1998, that number for China was single digits. They've gone from single digits to 68% in roughly 3 decades. Margaret?
Well, and they haven't lowered standards either, and that's why they are ascendant and you know, competing head-to-head with us right now. Well, you know, the numbers speak for themselves. That's why we have to, as you said, Jim, bring college to the high school so that we can bring that post-secondary learning there. And I think, and it's suggested here, but I think we had for too long kind of conflated college with a 4-year baccalaureate degree, and that ain't necessarily so now in the world of advanced manufacturing, technology, licensure, those sorts of things that are every bit as powerful as a baccalaureate degree. And so we need to make sure that we understand that is underneath this. Look, again, it's about expectations, it's about access, and it's about accountability. And what's happening in American higher education, as John knows well every single day, is we haven't kept the main thing the main thing. We've gotten distracted with all manner of, you know, whatever term you want to use, which we do not have the luxury of doing. We're talking about ourselves too much and our freedoms and our rights and our academic niceties and whatnot. We're getting our heads handed to us. So we got to keep the main thing the main thing.
John, as I mentioned, you head up the largest higher education public system in the United States. Over 300,000, close to 350,000 students, about 140,000 plus or minus of those are in a community college setting, moving towards an associate degree. Then you've got the bachelor's degree, and you've got research that go beyond that. What do we need to do to improve the numbers not only going into school, but we know that there's only about 1/3 of the people in the nation that have a bachelor's degree. What do we need to do to get them through the system?
It's a long list, but 3 things real quick. One is we do need to do more early college, because part of the challenge, especially for students who would be the first in their family to go to college, is they're not sure they could do it. And that experience of doing a college course while you're in high school can change your expectations of yourself, and that encourages students not just to go to college, but then they can start to see themselves as someone who can succeed in college. So that's 1. 2, we've got to focus colleges on completion. It's not just about enrolling freshmen. It's about graduating students at the end of the process. And we don't organize ourselves that way. We spend too much time, as Margaret said, on political distractions and not on the core work of making sure that every student gets the skills and support that they need. Maybe it's intensive tutoring that they need. Maybe it's a food pantry on campus because they're struggling with food insecurity. But every day, everyone on campuses should be asking, what more can we do to make sure that all of our students walk across that stage? And that's the culture shift we're working on at the State University of New York. The third thing is, the degree is not enough. you also need to have some connection to what you're going to do with that degree afterwards. So we've set a goal at SUNY to have every undergraduate have an internship experience, because we want all of our students, whether they're in sociology or engineering, to be prepared for career success. And we know that when students have an internship, they are employed more quickly after they graduate, and they are employed at a higher level after they graduate. So we've got to shift how we think about higher education as not just the place where you take a set of academic classes, but the place where you prepare for what's next.
Jim, please.
Can I add an important statistic to this number, which is a little bit alarming when you think about the progress China's made? They will graduate this year 20 million college students. They'll graduate.
Versus the United States of?
Well, add India to that. India will graduate 15 million, and they're growing exponentially right now. They've doubled down. They see the United States as the role model for the power of education. So both of those countries have doubled down. That's 35 million college graduates, many with STEM education. America will graduate 4 million, and it's declining. So do the math. Where are we in 20 or 30 years if we don't, and this is what each of us can do in this room, stop the negative narrative. There's a war on post-secondary education. I never thought I'd see that in my lifetime. Yeah. And it's crazy. So let me address one of just one. There's so many negative things. You think college is more important today, or more expensive today than it was when I went to school long time ago?
Yes, it is.
Margaret, I'll give you the numbers. It's actually more affordable today than when I went to school. Because I got to tell you, my $10,000 room and board and tuition was an insurmountable obstacle for a kid making $1.20 an hour at McDonald's. But if you just do the math, here's a number that very few people talk about. It's called discount rate. I'm not sure the actual number, but I'll guarantee you SMU's discount rate is more than 50%. So the sticker price looks like it's $80,000, $85,000 a year. The average kid is paying $40,000 a year. No one reports that number. Second thing, I don't know what SMU's endowment was in 1975, but I guarantee you it wasn't where it is today. They have so much more money available. And the availability of scholarships. Throw on top of that the availability of free community college, thanks to the Dallas Promise and all of the other things. There's like 35 major metropolitan areas now that have free college. Arguably, college today is more affordable than it was in 1975. But
we've covered a lot of ground, and we've identified some real challenges and problems. But I want to leave us with that sense of optimism that you talked about, Jim. So I'm going to go to the essay question, so to speak. Margaret, tell us the 2 or 3 things. If you were the guru, the queen of education, what are the big things that we can do that would make a quantum jump in education?
Well, as I say, starting with high expectations and an attitude that says, just as is the case when you go and expect a service, your car repaired, whatever, that we're going to take every single one of the people who walk through our door and we're going to get them out the side with something of value, a personalized intentionality to do that for every single one, and not satisfaction with these answers. Number 2, start with reading. And we know how to do it. This is what drives us crazy. We know what the science of reading is. We know how little children's brains develop. We know what the tools are, what it takes. And in a few pockets, we're proving that it can be done. The so-called Mississippi Miracle, where they went from virtually dead last in this country to leading the nation. So teach every kid to read by using what we know. And number 3, I would say, that we need to really harness the power of technology in infinitely smarter ways than we do right now in education and for teacher preparation. And, if you look at you've heard all of this sort of statistic. If you walk into a school today, it looks exactly like the school that George Washington went to. A sage on the stage, as we call it. And we really just need to break our thinking about how to use technology.
So it's really flipping the model, thinking about it instead of time, first grade, second grade, third grade, in terms of mastery of material.
Mastery of material, using technology.
John?
I mean, I'd say amen to everything that Margaret said. The two things I might add is we aren't serious about math in American public education. I remember when I was state commissioner of education in New York, I was talking to the dean of a teacher.
Which is really the foundation of all technology.
That's right. Yeah. I was talking to the dean of a teacher prep institution about teacher preparation. And the dean said, you know, when someone comes to me and they say they don't like math, I tell them, that's okay, you could be an elementary school teacher. And I thought, but the problem is, that's where the students are going to get the foundational math skills that are going to shape the rest of their life. If you're not doing algebra by 8th grade, your chances of becoming a doctor are vanishingly small, right? So the foundation in math in the early grades is critical. So I sort of pushed the dean on it, and the dean said, well, you know, we have enrollment challenges. I gotta take all comers. And I said, that's fine, but you have got to make sure that you are graduating. Maybe someone says math is not their thing, but when they leave and you send them out to teach, math better be their thing, because we have to make sure that our students are prepared.
Amen.
Right? So we need to take on math education and math preparation with great seriousness. So that is one thing I'd add to what Margaret said. The other is this focus on teacher quality. We know, I'll go back to my story about Mr. Osterweil, who made such a difference in my life. We know that low-income students are significantly more likely to have the teacher who's a long-term sub, the teacher who's teaching math but never studied math, the teacher who's teaching physics but never took physics, right? If you concentrate our students facing the greatest challenges with the teachers who are the least prepared, you get terrible outcomes. We have to change that. And I know Dallas has done good work in this respect. You talked about some of the incentives that are in place, but we've got to focus on producing a pipeline of well-prepared teachers and then having real accountability. If you're a teacher in a classroom and year after year, your students aren't making any progress, we can't look the other way. We have to do something about that.
Jim, I mentioned when I started out, dedication, commitment, and passion. You have been working on an idea, and I have been a benefactor of having a chance to talk to you about it, that is a very different way of looking at education. It looks at it across our entire nation, and you think it has enormous potential to be that quantum jump. As we close, tell us all about it.
Sure. Well, I want to leave everyone. We've talked about a lot of scary things tonight, and a lot of kind of seemingly negative stuff. But I want to share with you that I believe strongly in the idea that there is hope. There is a solution. We're on the cusp of a new era in technology, and most businesses have embraced it. Virtually all businesses have embraced it. Picked up an operating system, 7-Eleven, it transformed us. The American Red Cross was transformed with an operating system because we had data, we had accountability. And so my push, I've met now with the Secretary of Education, Secretary McMahon, twice, and in order to get in the door, candidly, I had to change my pitch from don't eliminate the Department of Education, reposition it with technology. Didn't get me anywhere. So now it's the mega idea, make education great again. I even brought her a red hat. The hat was more successful than the idea. But here's the idea. She's actually encouraged me. I meet in the first week of December with the National Governors Association because apparently the president's committed to eliminating the Department of Education, pushing it to state and local government. My pitch is that you would never have defense on a state-by-state basis. Imagine the chaos that would cause. You'd never have an interstate system that stops at state line. So why do we think we should have education without the data on a national basis to accelerate every child in the country? So what I'm pushing for, thank you. So you remember your life before this, before iOS? Remember MapsCo? Right? What a pain. And remember WordPerfect, but it didn't communicate with, well, that's EdTech today. And during the pandemic, everybody said, oh, EdTech, that's terrible. You know, because we weren't ready. Today, the tools exist to integrate, to add security, and add privacy. You've seen healthcare systems now. Finally, we're having national healthcare systems where your data is all captured, safely, security. Why not have an operating system for every child? So every child in this country has a portal, and they have access to the best education technology tools in the country. Instead, what we have to do today is sell it into 13,000 independent school districts separately, and it's intimidating for these ed tech companies. Why not provide the best tools from Khan Academy to Google Classroom? With that portal, it opens up all kinds of exciting things. Why do we give scholarships after someone completes their academic experience? It's because we had to write a check. Well, in technology, blockchain secured accounts, we could have a 529 account for each kid, and they could earn 20 cents at a time for incremental online learning going right into their 529 account, growing interest. By the time they graduate, they've got enough money saved for college. These are all things that are possible with a portal. Then a teacher portal. A teacher could invite the best algebra teacher in the country to come into their classroom. We could take an operation in progress at UT Southwestern and bring it right into any classroom in the country. Talk about engaging students and lighting them up with exciting things. The objective should be, I want my kids to be as excited about school as they are with their video games. And that's possible with technology today if we harness the power. Then finally, parents too want a portal into their children's progress. Parents can then see the grade and the progress all along the way. But most importantly today, with AI, Margaret, you mentioned this, we can have individualized learnings. The tools exist today. There is zero excuse for us not to have 100% literacy, because today the tools exist to provide a tablet to every child when they're 3 or 4 years old, and they can be proficient in reading by the 1st or 2nd grade with an AI tutor. These tools exist. And when you're scaling it across 55 million students, look, I don't know much about education, really. I'm a business guy. I don't know much about technology, but I do know scale. And the cost to do this across 55 million school kids in this country is not that great. It's affordable. So that's the dream, that we have an education operating system that can, I mentioned the word revolution in education. I believe it's possible by harnessing the power of education, not being afraid of it, instead bringing it to the table and making it available to every child, every classroom, and every parent in this country. Will change the face of education forever.
And a platform that allows us.
Thank you. Wish me luck with the governors. And call Governor Abbott. We need it here.
And a platform that allows every student to have historically how they've done, that allows them to have future plans that are individualized, the student to put those on, and to be able to have educators all across the country put the best content in. Absolutely. It's that mastery that we spoke about earlier. We could go on for hours, but I want to thank especially our 2 secretaries. Thank you for joining us. Your commitment to education, your commitment to our country is appreciated. And Jim, congratulations, not on all of your work that you've already done,
Thank you, Jim.
but hopefully all the success that you're going to have in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Mayor Leopard, masterfully done. Thank you so much, and thank you to both secretaries. And again, on behalf of all of us, congratulations, Jim Keyes. You've left us with a sense of what we can all do. And thanks to all of you for supporting the World Affairs Council and recognizing our friend, Jim Keyes. We'll see you next year. Thanks again.